Welcome back, freedom seekers. Today we are diving deep into the world of self-hate, self-contempt, and self-ridiculing. If you're someone who gives up easily when faced with difficulty or constantly compares themselves to others, this video is for you. We'll be discussing the vulnerabilities and hypersensitivity to criticism that always comes with these traits, and also the tendency to place no value on your time or efforts. But don't worry, we're not here to criticize or belittle you. In fact, we're going to be exploring Karen Horney's groundbreaking work on Neurosis and Human Growth to help you break free from these harmful patterns of self-belittling. So grab a notebook and get ready to take some notes, because we're about to embark on a journey towards mental freedom. So what is self-contempt or self-loathing? This is just a word that Karen Horney uses for the many ways in which people undermine their self-confidence. It could be they belittle themselves, they disparage themselves, they always doubt themselves, they discredit anything they do, and they're always criticizing themselves. Now, this is different from self-accusation, which we looked at in the last video, where the person feels guilty because they're always accusing everything that they do. Self-contempt is different in such a way that the person makes themselves feel worthless. And after they feel worthless, then they start hating themselves for being worthless. Self-contempt is something we've all experienced in one way or another. Self-contempt is mainly directed against any striving for improvement or achievement. It's that voice in your head that tells you, don't bother to improve, you're unworthy of success. Now, for some people, it's very hidden, and others, it's very expressed, and also they feel it. An example is an attractive girl in public who wanted to powder her nose, and then she found herself saying to herself, "How ridiculous, ugly duckling, you're trying to look pretty again." Another example is an intelligent man who was interested by a psychological subject, and then he thought about writing a paper on it. Then he said to himself, "You considered ass, what makes you think you could write a paper on anything?" Now, here is one very little interesting trick about the brain. Now, there's some people who seem so open in making sarcastic and funny comments about themselves. But this is actually sometimes a trick. Not all the time, but sometimes it's a trick. They make fun of something about themselves that they don't care about. So in that case, they've made fun of themselves, yes, and it's funny, but then they're using this fun to actually protect themselves from that thing they actually care about. And then they save themselves from the self-hate. A good example is a person who is very insecure about their intelligence, but then they're very confident about their looks. So what they do is that they actually make fun of their looks, which they're confident about. In that way, they don't feel anything, and then they protect themselves from their insecurity about the intelligence part. They never make fun of that part. Now, here's another little trick about humble people or modest people. This is not all of them, but some of them. Sometimes these self-discrediting attitudes can be praised as being humble or modest. A good example is a person, after taking care of their sick relative, they will say, "Oh, that's the least I could do." Or a doctor, when their patient has become healthy and back to life, they'll be like, "Oh, it was just good luck." Or the patient has very good, body vitality. But if the patient does not actually get better, then the doctor would consider it his failure. Another example is well-informed people who don't speak up in discussions because they're scared of appearing ridiculous. Of course, such discrediting of people's assets and achievements is very harmful to their development. Now, the last tricky way in which self-contempt shows itself is when people place insufficient value on their time, their work done, or their wishes, or their opinions, right? And also in the same category are people who have lost the capacity to take anything seriously. Things that they do, say, or feel, they don't take them seriously. And they're also very shocked if others take them seriously. These people sometimes develop a cynical attitude towards themselves, and are also very suspicious of the world. They're suspicious of themselves. Now, the last group of people who are very apologetic and also very obedient, in a very kind of uncomfortable way. Now, that is self-hate. Okay, enough with that long introduction. Now, of course, my dear friends, we all know that if you have a disease, there is a way it affects your body. So now we're going to go through the 4 consequences of having this self-contempt. We're going to see how it holds us back in life and kind of makes us suffer. Now, of course, if we take this out, we're not becoming gods, but we're going to have a better experience on earth. And that is good enough in itself. Okay, the first consequence of self-contempt is the need for neurotic people to compare themselves with everybody who they come in contact with. And they don't just compare themselves, they compare themselves to their own disadvantage. Oh, the other person is more impressive. Oh, they're better informed. Oh, they're more interesting. Oh, they're more attractive. Oh, they're better dressed. Oh, they're younger. Oh, they have better position in life and they have greater importance. But these comparisons do not strike the person as loop-sided. They don't think through them clearly. And even if they do, they still feel inferior. The comparisons are not only unfair, they also don't make sense. Why would an older man who could be proud of his own accomplishments compare himself with a youngster who is a better dancer? Or why would someone who has never been interested in music feel inferior to a musician? Oh, I'm smelling something. Do you smell that? It's bullshit thinking. The thinking is wrong. Now we have to remember that this practice only makes sense when we understand that the person feels like they should be superior to everybody in every regard. Even if the person has never been a musician, they feel like they should be superior to all musicians. Now, the reason why the person should be superior to everybody and why they feel that way is something we discussed in the earlier videos, so check them out, right? But since they feel like they should be superior to everybody and everything, then of course any superior skill or quality in others must be disturbing, and they feel like, oh, they're gonna self-destruct now because someone else is better than them. Like, even if the person has never practiced mathematics and then they find someone who has done math for 10 years, then they're going to feel inferior to the person. It doesn't make sense. This person has clearly practiced for 10 years and you have done nothing, right? Sometimes the operation operates in reverse. The person is already berating and belittling themselves, and then they use the good quality of others to reinforce this self-criticism, right? So the person already feels inferior, and then they watch, Ronaldo or Messi on TV, and then they use, Ronaldo's high skill and Messi's high skill to even feel more inferior to themselves. But truth is that this guy has never been a footballer. He doesn't even care about football, right? So the thinking is wrong. Now, the second consequence of this self-contempt or self-hate is vulnerability in all human relations. The self-contempt makes a person very hypersensitive to criticism and rejection. With very little or no proof, the person feels like others look down on him, they don't take him seriously, they don't care for his company, or they do not even consider him. His self-hate makes him uncertain about himself. And since he cannot be certain about himself, he's not certain about the attitude of others. Being unable to accept himself as he is, he cannot possibly believe that others, knowing him with all his shortcomings, can accept him in a friendly or appreciative spirit. Now, living like this for a long time, the person may come to the conclusion that people plainly despise him. But this is unconscious, so the person is not even aware of this self-hate. So both this conviction of being despised and also this blindness, he doesn't know that, he feels like people despise him. The person starts to poison all of his human relationships, right? He becomes unable to take any positive feeling from others at face value. If someone compliments him, then the person will be like, oh, that's a very sarcastic comment. Or if you express sympathy, then it's going to be like, oh, that's very condescending pity. If someone wants to see him, then the person will think, oh, it is because someone wants something from me. Or when someone says that, oh, we like you, they love him, then the person will think to themselves, oh, it's because they don't know me well enough, or it's because they're worthless or neurotic, or it's because I can help them in a certain way. Similarly, incidents which in fact have no hostile meaning, the person interprets them as evidence of existing self-hate. Now, if someone has not greeted him on the street, or someone has not accepted his invitation, or someone has not responded to his message right away, then the person is like, oh, that is proof that he despises me. If someone makes a good joke about him, then the person is like, oh, they clearly humiliate me. This is proof. And also, if someone, gives an objection or criticism to a suggestion that the person has, and the person is like, oh, I can see this is proof. This is evidence that people despise me. This is why it's almost impossible to not offend some people. The person already unconsciously thinks that people despise him, and the person doesn't know that he thinks like this. So what happens is that whenever you say anything or do anything, they're going to take it out of context and use it as proof that, oh, you despise them. And so they are very hypersensitive, right? They distort everything. It's like, a light ray passing through a glass of water, right? When the glass is very seated and clear, then the right light ray can easily pass through, right? But if you shake the glass of water, then it's like the same light ray is going to look distorted. So these people's thoughts, they're distorted. They're not, they're not healthy. Now, if you've offended someone, but you actually did not offend them, you didn't do anything wrong, but then they felt offended, sometimes, you may be mad at them. But the thing is that you should not be, right? You should really feel sorry for them because, they're already suffering. They have an unconscious interest in regarding other people as their offenders. Of course, it is painful for the people or for anybody to feel despised and rejected, but it is less painful than coming face to face with their own self-hate. It is a long and hard lesson for anybody to learn that other people can neither hurt nor establish self-esteem. Now, in the previous video, we talked about something called neurotic pride, which is very different from this self-despising. It's very difficult to know if a person feels humiliated because something has hurt his pride or because he already feels despised, and then he has externalized his self-despising. Now, these two work very, they're very interwoven. But of course, we can see from the way the person reacts, right? If the person comes back at you with very high arrogance, and is, very outspoken and loud, then of course, most likely it is their pride that has been hurt. But for the same provocation, if the person, starts to like efface themselves and is like, feeling down and everything, then, clearly that is self-despising that has made them feel like that. Okay, now, the third consequence of self-contempt is that the person often takes on too much abuse from others. They may not even recognize that they're being abused, right? Even if they're being humiliated or exploited, right? Even if their friends come to their attention, then they tend to minimize, or justify the offender's behavior, right? One of the factors causing this defenselessness is because the person deep down feels like they don't deserve any better treatment, right? They already despise themselves, as we already know. So an example is, of course, a woman whose husband is flaunting his affairs with other women, right? And the woman is not even able to complain, or she doesn't even feel conscious resentment. She doesn't even feel mad, It could be because she feels unlovable and regards most other women as more attractive than herself. She's like, why not? Of course, that is what's supposed to happen. Now, the last and fourth consequence of this self-contempt is the need to alleviate or balance self-contempt with the attention, regard, appreciation, admiration, or love of other people, right? The person pursues other people and is very compulsive, right? Because the person doesn't want to be at the mercy of, hating themselves and despising themselves, right? So for girls, sometimes it's because, they're always looking for attention from guys, because now if they don't have that attention, it's like, okay, now the self-despising is coming in, Like also the guys, some guys like, they need to have girls around the whole time, Now, of course, living with someone who is very attention-seeking can be annoying, but you must understand where they're coming from, and then maybe you're going to feel sorry for them actually. The person has no reason. If they do not try to get its attention, they're going to succumb to self-hate. So they're going to suffer, right? That's why this behavior is very compulsive, and they have to tie their self-worth onto the evaluation of other people. If other people evaluate them higher, then they feel good. If other people evaluate them lower, then they're going to get depressed. At this point in the day, you might be asking yourself, after all this crazy-ass behavior, what do people actually despise in themselves? The answer is everything. Their human limitations, their body, their appearance. It doesn't matter if the person is good-looking, they will say that they're ugly. It doesn't matter if the person is smart, they will say they're not smart. They will despise their memory, their critical thinking, their special skills, anything because of the self-hate. But despite the fact that the person despises everything, there's some places where the person despises themselves more. And that is due to the neurotic solution they have. Of course, everybody's neurotic, but maybe I shouldn't use this word. But yeah, so people who have an aggressive solution to life, they're going to despise in themselves anything that they see as a weakness. So I'm going to go through some examples, and from these examples, do not focus on the example, but try to see the thinking behind the person in the example so that you can apply it to your life, because the goal of this video is actually for all of us to get better. So let's get an example of looks and appearance. Well, this happens normally in very beautiful women, and maybe because the world puts a lot of emphasis on their beauty, right? So the woman may feel unattractive and might even feel repulsive, right? And of course it might be shocking on the outside, because like, oh, this woman is actually very beautiful, but why doesn't she feel beautiful? Well, we're thinking wrong. Objectively, she's beautiful, but to her, she's not beautiful because she's comparing herself to an idealized image, not something real, and her actual self, right? And even if she knows that she's beautiful, the self-hate comes from her not being the absolute beauty of the whole world, right? That idealized image must be better than everybody in the world. And of course, this is impossible, right? So she's going to start focusing on imperfections, a scar, something like maybe her waist is not slender enough, or her hair is not naturally wavy. Then she's gonna make herself, oh, I'm so ugly. And then very small things, she'll start having weird behaviors. Maybe some people they hate to look in the mirror. Some people, if you're sitting next to them in the bus and then you walk away and go to another seat, then they're going to be like, oh man, I'm ugly. That's why that person moved away, right? I'm an ugly ass person. So that's the self-hate. Well, continuing in this example, let's see, what is going on here. So the fact is that the woman is not ugly, or the guy is not ugly. And they're going to try to solve the problem in a very wrong way, right? So there are two solutions that people normally have. One is to counteract this self-belittling behavior, or another is to have a don't care attitude, right? In the counteracting of the self-belittling behavior, the person may spend a lot of money on hair, dresses, hats. They might go for a plastic surgery, and because they spend a lot of time trying to make themselves look less ugly. But the fact is that they're already not ugly. The reason why they're ugly is because they think they're ugly, but not because they're objectively ugly. And in the second solution, in the don't care attitude, the person then tries to don't care. Then they'll let themselves get overweight, don't take care of the food they eat. In both ways, the people are solving the problem in the wrong way. Now, personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with plastic surgery, right? Of course, but we must see why the plastic surgery is actually being done. If it's because of neurosis and self-hate, then it's likely to be detrimental to the person. But if the person just objectively just wants something, then I think that's okay. Okay, now let's shift gears and even go deeper into understanding this. Now, there are two unconscious questions that are going on here, and they're interlinked, but they're very different. The first question is, am I attractive? Which is inseparable from the second question, which is, am I lovable? Well, we have to understand, am I attractive is more like, is my appearance sufficient enough to attract love? Yes, that's one thing. Then the second one, am I lovable, is, do I have qualities that make me lovable, right? Although the first one is more important when people are younger, the fact is that the second one, do I have qualities that make me lovable, is one which is relevant to helping us attaining happiness in our love life. But here is the problem. Lovable qualities have to do with personality. And when we are neurotic, we have no interest in our personality. All we want is to have a shiny surface and to have glamour. The fact is that there is no glamour in having and developing lovable qualities, but there may be glamour in having the right figure or just the right dress. So this is how we can understand what is going on. When we're neurotic, we have a need for glamour. We want to stand out and, look like the best and, be out there. We have this ideal image that we want to attain. And then we focus on what is not important. Okay, so here's a full circle. We belittle ourselves. We have the self-hate, yes. And so we have tied our self-esteem to how other people perceive us. If they like us more, we have a higher self-esteem. If they hate us, then we have a lower self-esteem. So we focus on glamour, on the shiny surface. And then we take our attention from what actually matters, which is the lovable qualities. And then we focus on just the outside, which actually doesn't matter in our love life. And since we have not worked on the inside part, we keep suffering. And then we shall actually never be happy, because even the outside that we're trying to perfect, right? We cannot enjoy it because we have a wrong way of thinking. We shall never become that ideal image. We can never become that absolute. So it's kind of like an unending cycle that will never stop. And then that's why I'm trying to make this video, so that at least if we can see these issues, then we can stop the cycle, right? The fact that you cannot be the most beautiful person. There's so many beautiful people. You cannot be the smartest person. There's so many smart people. Well, let's finish the video by understanding the summary of the self-belittling processes that we've been talking about. This self-belittling or self-disparaging disturbs the active pursuit of any interest to a varying degree. So if the person is interested in his looks or in their intelligence and they're trying to do that, it could be sports, then these effects show up and then make it difficult for us when we have these issues, to finish it. So the effects could be something like, you may be frightened before or at a public performance, but the most common effect is that people give up at the first difficulty of anything because they talk themselves down and then they just leave, right? And the sad thing is that despite all of these difficulties, even if the person finishes the piece of work well done and well received, the self-belittling does not end. They're like, oh, anyone could have achieved the same thing with so much work put in, right? They say, this time I got by, but the next time it's going to be difficult. Yeah. Well, these things are valid, but the problem is that a failure, on the other hand, calls for the full force of this self-hate and this discouraging beyond its actual significance. So when the good things happen to them, then they do not want to give themselves credit. When bad things happen, then they blame themselves for everything. So you can see the problem. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is the end. It's getting a bit long, but you can check out the other videos on my channels if you've liked this one. And then also leave a comment in the comments section, and also, click the like button if you enjoyed what you. Thank you.